Let's talk about resistor ladders. Resistor ladders is sort of anything that has resistors in this kind of orientation or vaguely like this. And it can be used for actually quite a few things. In this particular case, we've got 5 different button presses, and depending on which button is pressed, you'll get a different voltage out on your Arduino analog pin. So let's say I press this down, I'll get exactly 5 volts to it. Whereas if I press this down, I might get 4, and maybe this is 3, and maybe this is 2, and maybe this is 1. Button presses higher up here have to go through more resistors. So this is one variation. This is actually probably something more similar to this is probably how I would have done the keyboard instrument circuit. If these resistors are very similar, it'll end up having a greater range in values than the actual keyboard instrument circuit has. But the actual keyboard instrument circuit works quite well too. So let's take a look at that. So in this case, why don't we look at this guy? So kind of a similar idea, except each button is connected to its own resistor, not a chain of them. And so they all have to be different. But notice, like there's some massive jumps going on. And at 10 kilo ohm, that's already like you're getting a pretty small value. And 1 mega ohm is just huge. If you have access to anything in between, I would way rather use like a 5 kilo ohm here or a 1 kilo ohm. I think that'll get you a better value. But they went for 1 mega ohm for some reason. Anyway, you are free to modify these. You just have to modify the code as well, which you might have to anyway, because your values might not match theirs. So that's resistor ladders. You can actually use them for some other stuff too. If you check this out, it's a little hard to see, but this is Wikipedia's example of how to make your own digital to analog converter. So if you hook up a bunch of these to your Arduino, and so you could use however many pins you want to get a certain voltage output. So by having some on and some off in sort of like a binary fashion, you could make your own digital to analog converter, sort of a poor man's digital to analog converter, but it requires a ton of pins, so maybe not so poor man's. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you have some understanding of resistor ladders and some of the ways they can be used. In this particular case, the big benefit is you've got all these buttons and they only need to be connected to 1 pin. This can be really useful, particularly if you've got, say, a LCD screen and you've got it in 8-bit mode. That'll take a ton of these pins. So if you can then hook up all your buttons to 1 analog pin, that's a good advantage. So that's mainly what we'll be using it for right now. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening.